Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of KHANTEHNT!
KHANTEHNT!
Today we are back with the finale, last 4 episodes of Deca-Dence!
Deca-Dence!
But first, you should go check out our $10 bonus episodes. We have 2 available now and more coming monthly. Prefectural Earth Defense Force and
Vampire Wars.
Vampire Wars. Go check them out, everybody.
So, Deca-Dence, the last 4 episodes, I would have to say, for me, even more so than God of High School, this was a bit of a, it was alright. It's just kind of alright.
God of High School kind of didn't really fuck up, but like had weirdness in more interesting ways.
Yeah.
The problem with this is, as we feared, it did everything we expected, had very little in the way of twists. You know, my fears, our first episode, shockingly little twists. Everything I fear, I said episode 1, like, you get scared with a series like this, that everything of interest is in the first couple episodes, and that is exactly what happened here.
Pretty much. I mean, we had said that this was sort of just becoming a generic stop the dystopia story, and that is exactly what happens. I mean, the last 4 episodes are just basically the third act, big battle, like, with so many steps in between. And that's really where the problem comes in, is that, like, there was no new character development or arcs really going on.
We learned why Jill, the godlike hacker cyborg girl, is so good, because she worked on Deca-Dence originally. Does this change our understanding of the character in any way, or develop her emotionally, or us? No, not at all.
Like, episode 9 is almost wholly focused on, like, the guy who was planning to betray everybody and
I wrote down their names. These fascinating names. Turkey and Sark. Turkey and Sark, ladies and gentlemen.
So they're planning to betray everybody. We already knew this was going to happen at the end of the last episode.
They really beat you over the fucking head at the end of episode 8 with that.
It was so apparent what was going to happen that it made it seem like it must be something that they're setting up for later, that will be like a betrayal at an unexpected moment. No, it just plays out.
It just happens. In a way, I guess it's kind of refreshing that just what they say is going to happen literally happens with no deviation. But it doesn't really hold your interest very long.
It doesn't really have any consequences other than that, like, so this bad guy gets this nice guy to betray his friends.
Yeah.
The actual betrayal and the consequences thereof are only felt by the guy who did the betrayal, who then ends up sacrificing himself to undo the betrayal. So the
redeeming
whole episode,
himself,
the whole episode, nothing happens, basically. Like, he was going to betray them, then he sacrifices himself instead. Nothing changes about his personality or character to make this happen. It's just what was obvious.
If you're really invested in the character of the booze-making robot man Sark, then you'll be like, yes, an episode for me at long last. But if you're not, as we kind of weren't, then yeah, it kind of falls flat. And the whole episode was about this great emotional struggle. It didn't do much for me.
No, and like, I mean, none of our main characters really, again, there's no new development. They did all their character development in the first 8 episodes. Now they are just finishing the story. So almost all of the dialogue is about the story.
Yeah.
But, like, there's nothing left in the story. All that's left is beat the bad guys.
How about this? In episode 9, Kaburagi finally tells Natsume that, the world's an illusion, the world is fake, and Natsume is upset by this. For how long does he deal with the traumatic emotional struggle of that? Like 5 minutes of runtime, because then she talks to the other Katsuragi or whatever, like the strong girl, and she's just over it, and she loves the boss, and she's completely over any emotional trauma there. It feels a little bit like high school, the God of High School, only there is no source material that was skipped. It was just like this from the start.
Yeah. It's super weird because you've got all these characters that never did anything that are now have to be forced into the last stretch of episodes. You've got, like...
They've done things here and there. Little unimportant jobs were done. We see the girl with purple hair. She's there, and the other girl.
She gets, like, one shot at the very end of the last episode. And it's just like, this character never fucking did anything.
Start to finish, that character did nothing. Not one thing. She kind of teased Natsume episode 1. That's it. That's it.
It's really like the
She
weakness,
did have a great ass, though, to the end of the show.
It's a weakness of the fact that the characters just aren't interesting. And, like, we have two main characters who the show focused almost entirely on for the first, like, 4 or 5 episodes. It really never gave you the impression you were going to care about anybody else. And, like, you meet all the what are they called? The fighters.
The cyborgs?
No,
the gears. The gears.
Yes.
Yeah.
The gears, the human gears, the ones who fight alongside the gears or whatever.
Oh, the tankers. Fighters, yeah.
So you meet the tankers. They have their whole arc but like all of it really is just about how it affects Natsume. In that arc. They as characters are not interesting. Then you've got all the prisoners, and it's kind of the same story, but with Kaburagi, where like none of them are interesting. They are one-note characters who exist to facilitate his emotional journey and growth and his ability to complete the plot. So it's like, once you've had each of those stories where each of them met this group of one-dimensional characters that changed them, those characters don't do anything else. They don't have their own arcs. They don't get to do anything interesting or cool in the finale. They're just there, they're just participating.
So during the finale, so the plot is first of all, there just is a switch. The mission, the epic mission to break out of the system is go into the the factory where they make the gadolls, the monsters, and press the button that already exists to exterminate all of them.
Yeah.
And they do it, and there really isn't much challenge in doing it. Congratulations, you've solved the problem of the series for the most part.
Yeah, it felt like such a weird tension dispersal because, like, they basically destroy all the Gadol, and then, like, kind of just out of nowhere, there was a
mutation.
Big one.
Okay, but hey,
they're evolving.
Let's give them a little bit of credit because there are one or two good lines in here that I think Jill says here. So we talked about Jill. She gets a little bit of fleshing out. She worked on building Deca-Dence, but she's a bug. Why was she a bug? Why was she in jail? Well, we eventually learn it's because as one of the creators of the Deca-Dence system, she had a different philosophy than the overarching one. Hers was not that bugs cannot be tolerated, all bugs are evil. It's that bugs are like a natural consequence of the diversity of life and the universe and everything. Yeah. And it's only natural to expect them and, maybe like look for the good in them, which is the opposite of the rigid, totalitarian, authoritarian structure of the system as it exists. And she said...
They say, because we later find out...
Oh, wait, I forgot about that scene! Okay, go on.
It turns out that everything in the show has been planned because the system... accounts for there being bugs and sends people to stop the bugs, and all of it is part of keeping things in order while also allowing evolution to happen, I guess. None of the themes of the series reflect this in any way, and in the end they just defeat the system, and none of it, like...
I think the author was just looking for a cool scene. First of all, okay, this series has been literally the Matrix since day one. That's what it is. Humans being used as a tool, like their suffering doesn't matter. Machines, robots, whatever, in control of everything. They're here to like maintain an orderly system to benefit themselves. And then we get to a part where they just literally copy the entire conversation from the second Matrix movie with the architect, where, the big system boss just explains everything that you're doing, including the bugs. We actually allow bugs in our like top level understanding because it's all part of this controlled chaos that we're using to facilitate evolution. Literally, what the fuck are they talking about? Because they get overthrown and like aren't in control anymore.
Was this the plan?
Freedom reigns? Or were they a libertarian system all along? Like constructing a system to allow maximum freedom? I don't understand anything that's implied by that scene.
So is the idea that humans now have evolved enough to rule themselves? But it took I literally don't know.
I have no fucking idea what that scene was supposed... I really think he was just like, I need to include a scene that's like, everything was part of the big plan. Will I explain in what way or what the
big plan?
There is literally no clarification as to what the real plan was all along by allowing bugs. They should have stamped out all the bugs, I guess. They shouldn't have allowed that. Okay, at the end, the cyborgs still exist. They do still exist, and they're, like, alive, and that's all fine. But now they, like, have freedom. They're not rigidly controlled anymore. And I'm just saying, as the one anime I've ever seen, Gurren Lagann famously said, like, at the end, they conclude with authoritarianism and like anarchy are both like imperfect. You just have to work really hard and find a balance that works for people. That's just exactly the conclusion they come to, but we don't see any at all struggle of that question, where the second half of Gurren Lagann is specifically about that question, which is why it feels like a maturation of the point of the first half.
Yeah.
This really feels like the first half of Gurren Lagann, and then we just say, we're done here. We got no more to develop, so I'd just rather go watch the first half of Gurren Lagann again.
I mean, weirdly, this show didn't need to even be 12 episodes. This could have been a movie or a short OVA and communicated just as much. What bothered me the most about the last 4 episodes is just how much dialogue there is about the plot that doesn't change our understanding of the plot.
Yeah.
Our understanding is, okay, the world's fake, bad guys want it to be that way. If we can stop them, everybody will be free. And then that's what happens. And the amount of conversations that have to happen that transpire to explain why we're doing this, and then this, and then this, and it's all just one after another, a sequence of events. There's no A plot, B plot, cutting around. There's
not really.
It's
anyway.
just one big event going on with everybody involved, and it's not interesting.
The only part that was who's grappling with this decision? Earlier on in the show, we saw that Kaburagi came to he was literally trying to commit suicide, basically at the beginning. Natsume's inspired him to think that that she's the motherfucking glitch, that the glitch in the system is good. It's literally Wreck-It Ralph is also the point of this movie.
The show is a weird combination of Wreck-It Ralph and Monsters, Inc. in an anime.
Set in within Gurren Lagann, mech combat or Attack on Titan stuff.
I keep thinking back to one of my favorite pieces of criticism was the Roger Ebert's review, his great movies review of Pulp Fiction, where he talks about how the dialogue is so good because it's about something. It's not about the plot. It's about other stuff that the characters are interested in talking about. And that's what makes them feel real, is that they're not literally just talking about how they are going to do the thing they have to do and then doing it. They're having, this show just didn't have enough of a world for characters to have something to talk about. There's nothing for them to do other than the plot. So it just kind of comes down to, again, these characters are fine and all in terms of being relatable or people who you can root for, but actually just watching them do fights. If the fights had been super amazing, it might have been different, but the fights are just people flying around shooting stuff at each other. It's
hard to track.
Hard
they were kind of cool. I really don't think. I think an apt comparison really is the first half of Gurren Lagann, because I talk about this all the time. But one of the elements that people kind of forget when they're not watching it actively is that part 1 of Gurren Lagann has many threads going at one time, and one of my favorite ones is that Viral, one of the bad guys, who's you could sort of think of him as the Kaburagi, sort of enemy at first, but is a collaborator, but then comes around to work with the good guys. Yeah. He really has a mystery plot unraveling what the fuck is going on in this world. And the difference with this show is they just tell you episode 2, so there is no mystery whatsoever, and there's nothing to worry about or wonder about.
You think there must be some
That's
twist.
what we're thinking, but there just
must
is
be some
not.
other shit. No.
And they hit you with that fucking architect scene where the computer acts like this was all part of my big master plan, but it clearly wasn't, and there's no indication that it was, and so it's fucking infuriating. They would have the audacity to try to imply it was.
What even really was the point of separating the bad guy into 2 separate characters? The idea of the system has always been presented as there's the glasses-wearing thing and this little ball of faces.
I never understood what that thing was, not one time.
Well, it just starts I had thought the whole time, because it was a bunch of different faces, it has no voice, I thought maybe it was either some total of reactions from somewhere, people were voting on it or something.
Yeah, wasn't there a voting thing?
No,
it's
that's
the
just
voice
something I said.
Oh, okay,
It's just a suggestion I had made of what it could be, because it just doesn't make sense for them to be 2 separate entities that in the end just turn out to be the same thing.
Yeah, something like that. They're 2 subsystems.
They just kind of fuse together, and it's just oh well, I'm just the system. There was nothing where it was oh, I'm the system, and turns out the system is actually, and it's doing, and instead it's just well, this is the system, everything was planned. Okay, bye.
But
now it's over.
That's not even true. That's not even, there's no way that's true. It wouldn't make any sense. Did it plan for itself to be overthrown? If so, why not just resign and let them take over if that's the plan? Why did they they could have had a scene where they're this would have made it way better. We needed to put this civilization through this struggle to level it up, kind of like Simone, fights in Gurren Lagann, he obtains maturity and resolution, all that stuff to defend the universe. Have that and just have the monologue scene where it explains this was necessary for your evolution as a society so that you would mature and grow. We super scientists thousands of years ago deduced that humanity and the machines needed this, so we did this. There was nothing of the sort.
No.
So what are we left with? Meaningless, pointless
Confusion,
action.
yeah.
Confusion.
And so the final battle as well, it feels like just a repeat of the battle we got halfway through the show. Big Deca-Dence punches big, slow-moving alien
Ever
monster.
since we saw the first one of those, it's just been this is just the Power Rangers thing they do.
Right.
Where they play the whole, the Sailor Moon transformation sequence. You see it once, got it, cool, do it again, I guess.
Well, and we were really expecting, so the whole show, the Deca-Dence, is just basically a town/boat that has a big fist on it.
Two big hands that clasp.
Clasp and punch. And so the thinking is obviously okay, well, in order for the Deca-Dence to ever do a more advanced attack, it's going to need more than just the two hands.
Yeah.
So our thinking is will it turn into a giant robot at some point?
That was my thought.
Will it grow more arms? I don't know. So in the second to last episode, we find out that there is parts of the Deca-Dence that have just been scattered around from all the battles it's been in. Now, what would have been really great is if all throughout the show, when the Deca-Dence got into battles, we see chunks fall off to the side and somebody says, we lost another part. It's a shame because it's more powerful if we can harness all of them, or something just anything to suggest.
We didn't get any of that.
So that we could go, oh yeah, all the parts that broke off. And instead, it's literally just there are parts that broke off and they can be fused back together. I wonder what that's going to be about. So then, because of the fact that you're thinking that, because you haven't seen this thing in a more complete state, you're what could it look like in its final form? It turns out that the two hands are encased in a spike.
A drill spike kind of thing.
It just becomes a pole arm instead of a hand. And so when it fights the bad guy, it stabs it instead of just punching it.
Wow.
It stabs it extra hard with more thrust.
He goes limit mode, and I'm okay, finally he's going to turn into the mech that we've been waiting for when he activates his limiter. No, it just pushes harder.
Yep.
Talk about an anticlimactic ending. It
was very
This was the giant fusion. And also, I've got to call bullshit just on this. I know that rule of cool applies here. There's anime logic, there's stuff going on, but I'm still kind of perplexed that at no point did any of the people operating Deca-Dence think just for practical, usage, let's recycle parts. They're there, we could use them. Why not do that? Because they come to this conclusion so quickly that they could just use all these parts around. And how many decades, centuries, millennia have those parts been sitting around non-functional, and now they're just all totally useful? Is it literally just that they're pieces of metal that add extra weight to the drill? Because if so, I guess that makes sense. Strange,
underexplained,
unsatisfying.
I mean, and even so, earlier in the show, we have this rival character to Kaburagi who works within the system, and it's they used to be friends, and this guy doesn't want to betray the system, but he does want to work with Kaburagi. And even again, that arc happened by episode 6. That character pretty much disappears from the show for 4 or 5 episodes.
For a while, yeah.
And then when he finally comes back, again, there is no new arc. He just is put in a situation where he has to fight with Kaburagi and then does.
I mean, okay, yeah, because his cyborg body is on the planet.
Yeah.
So if something bad happens, he will die. So it's not like he had some crazy moral change of heart.
Or anything, no.
I mean, he did. I don't want to take too much credit away from it. Obviously, his thought process changed. They've been building to that. By the way, his name's Minato, the commander guy, friends with Kaburagi and whatnot. He got his little arc of, oh, you're doing something wrong. Ooh, we got to trust the system. No, I can't do it. Okay, I guess we'll try.
Why'd we never learn about their history together? Why doesn't he have some kind of dramatic reason that he's so afraid of betraying the system or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have some history. I believe he was in the squad with those guys and he chose to work with them. I think that's the case. But, I mean, yeah, that's it. That's it. He just...
would like a dramatic backstory with a memory scene or
just something like that would go a long way to make us care about this stuff.
Just the pacing of these last 4 episodes is so all over the place because it'd be something, some kind of big action would happen. They'd be like, all right, we did the next thing we got to do. And then everybody kind of like stands around and talks about it until they have to do another thing.
And then a new threat develops. And panic mode. Let's all get ready for this.
It felt so stop and start. There was no like dramatic build up and tension. And like you had already predicted in the last episode, we're going to hear the opening song. And like when it happens, it feels very out of, it's just like,
it wasn't even like
starts,
that dramatic a scene, really. I mean, that's like an editing and an animation thing, but I don't know. Like, I was really hoping that like the song would play and I'd be all hyped up and felt. As we were watching some of these episodes and the opening song played, I was getting emotional. I was like, yeah, I'm liking these characters. But then when you get to the actual the scene where they play the song and things are happening, it was just such a flat, because my expectations were so exceeded. They weren't exceeded at all. They were underperforming in the expectations department, and it was disappointing. And that's kind of the crucial word. And also the fact that everything was so predictable. This was just a checkbox of tropes. And they were all, I've seen them all 1,000 times, and I can't be excited when I just know exactly what's being set up and implied. That's it. It's not cool.
It was unfortunate. It's such a weird feeling to go from, at the start of the show, really feeling like we had no idea where this show is going. Like, it could be about so many different things. There's so many big thematic ideas behind it. All this commentary on capitalism and structure of society and evolution
and whatnot.
And it really all just kind of boiled down to like,
well, are you telling me that like total control and total chaos aren't necessarily the ideal ways to go? I think I literally said that like on our first episode, and it's just exactly where we've ended up. And I think that really makes the point that we haven't really gone anywhere, which is our biggest fucking fear. And the number one thing that I get worried about when like I launch into any new show that feels like it's trying to do something bigger, I'm like, they never succeed at this stuff. Or it's so rare that you're conditioned to like expect it to totally flatline. I don't know about a total flatline, but it wasn't impressive.
It could have been a lot worse. I went into it with relatively low expectations for the ending because I hadn't really heard good things or anything. I thought it would be more of a like abject clusterfuck.
It was
I
not
didn't expect
a
to get no answers, though. Like, I thought I would get bad answers. Instead, I got no answers. So I just kind of left feeling like, okay, well, I watched a thing punch a thing, and now I feel empty,
I feel that I understand the world, but that the world that was presented to me was not given enough characterization for me to be, like, immersed in the fate of it. Or background information to be, like, knowing where it's going and what to expect, other than just, like, this generic happily ever after, middle path kind of thing.
Could have been anything, and this is what it ended up being, is nothing, so...
And, speaking of tropes that they hit at the end, of course they do the thing where Kaburagi sacrifices himself. He spoiler alert, he dies at the end. The cyborg man shuts down and is dead. And then we cut to 3 years later, and we see that, okay, Deca-Dence has been turned into like a city, a stationary city. The cyborgs and humans are working together.
They got a party room.
They're playing sports instead of fighting battles now, so like people still have fun things they can do, competing with each other. Yay, hooray, it turns out that like slaughtering humanity wasn't the only way that they could have fun. Isn't that a nice thing to find out? And then finally we see that Natsume, as she's grown up, she's doing like tour guide stuff. She's, I don't know, living a free life the way her dad would have wanted her to. So isn't that a nice ending for her? And then of course we hear, I think it was like 3 years later, they're just looking through files. Minato's become like commander-in-chief of like the entire system. Okay, fine. And Jill is looking through her files and like, wait, I think I forgot something. Wait a minute, I have a really important file here. This super genius hacker god remembers that she made a copy of Kaburagi's like entire brain scan. Literally forgot about it until now. And then we get hinted that like he's back in his avatar, he's back alive. So first of all, I just want to say, that's not literally him. This is a copy of him, so it's like a clone comes back, not the original. And second of all, specifically, wasn't there important lore about how within the cyborg... they're not robots with just data. They are cyborgs with organic components implied to be like brains or organic matter. And earlier on in the series, we see that when cyborgs get scrapped, they recycle what appears to be like the human core, probably the brain. I mean, it's a guess, but that seems to be likely what it is. I'm wondering, how the fuck do you download all the files for a cyborg with organic brain components and then, like, reinitialize that thing and just make it alive again? Unless, I mean, maybe it's true that, like, those components are, like, genericized brain, and you can, in fact, store the software that is one of these cyborgs. I guess it's possible, but it seems a little bullshit, and I really would have liked a bit more fucking explanation as to how this was achieved.
Instead of him just walking up at the end and...
And again, they're just like, just take these tropes. We don't need to explain them. You know what you're here for. Take the tropes and go. Big, dumb, happy ending. Everyone's happy. Everyone lives happily ever after. Don't worry about the larger implications of the series that, like, look, I didn't tell Deca-Dence to open Pandora's box into, like, all these deep philosophical concepts. They chose to do it, and now they're blue-balling me? That's on you, Deca-Dence. That is on you. That's not on me. And it's kind of sucks. Kind of sucks.
It's unfortunate. I mean, it's hard for me to be like, oh, this show is bad, because it's not bad.
It's not bad. It is not bad.
It's just beyond the point. Like,
I love getting a hand job like 3/4 of the way and then stopping. It's like, oh, that was enjoyable while it was going on. That last part was kind of important, but it's okay. I mean, I had a great time while we were doing it. Yeah. I feel like that with Deca-Dence.
Yeah, no come. There's just no come at the end. And, like, I would say with this show that, like, from the moment that it hit that sort of wall, which for me was, like, honestly episode 4, where I started to be like, oh, this is kind of a lot more generic than it seemed at first, and it never picked up from that. Like, it only got more generic. Even the prison stuff was, like, fun because it was so bizarre. But once we moved out of the prison, it was just wrap up the plot. So overall...
I kind of think that they expected the show to be carried on, like, the cutesiness of, like, the robot designs. Maybe. Because, like, the plot didn't really do much after that, and then we get to spend time with them. And there was cool stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I predicted...
This show, to me, is just, like, a grab bag of interesting ideas that have been threaded together with the most bare-bones story they possibly could. Like, just no... They thought of, like, here's what we want. We want to draw these weird... other types of character designs. We want to draw crazy aerial battles.
They look great together. The chibi designs and the main characters, they look cool.
I think that those aspects, I think all the, like, aspects of design came first with this show.
Absolutely.
And then the story was just built around them, and it was not... They just didn't take enough time to write a good story.
Clearly from the start, they were like, Attack on Titan version 12, go. Right. What do we got? And then they just dump tropes in there. They dump a couple basic plot points about authoritarianism and capitalism and stuff that they don't go into, like, at all. Well, a little bit. And, you know, I really don't want to shit on it either. It's just that when you start with, like, these big concepts at the beginning, you're setting expectations. And then if you let people down, that's your fault. If you start them in easier, I mean, this is what a show, you know, like Gurren Lagann does. It starts you in with low expectations for how complicated things get. You know what? Forget Gurren Lagann. It's like Metal Gear Rising. I mean, Metal Gear Rising does this great thing where it gets credit from me, massive credit, for seeming really stupid and dumb. And then it's a fun game, but it ramps up and actually gets pretty interesting. And you're like, whoa, these characters are saying some interesting concepts. And then the finale is, like, way cooler than you thought it would be and way more fun to analyze. It's so important to manage expectations. And I do not think if there's one crime this show commits, it is failing to manage expectations in a satisfying way.
I think that's fair. What would you score this show overall?
Oh, I'm conflicted.
I'm going to give it, like...
6.
Yeah, it's like a strong 5 to a light 6 for me. Like, it started strong. I would have thought it could be like a 7. Like, I think I said it the last one, like, the best a show could get is a 7, and that would be if it stuck the landing, and I don't think it stuck the landing.
Yeah, so I feel bad giving it a 6, because there's creativity and love, and it's anime original, you know? Yeah. I want to give them credit. The director of this did Cabaneri and the Iron Fortress, and, like, again, that one had a really cool... The writer of this the writer, right. It had a really cool premise. Actually, the premise wasn't that good. It was zombies. But it had great execution in episode 1. And you could be like, oh, if there's, like, a great writer, it'll go somewhere. I didn't finish that, but I'm here that it kind of flatlined as it went. And this feels the same way.
This, yeah.
I just... anime original Chads, when will we get our time? When will we have our day in the sun again?
It's just a matter of needing good writers. There's only so many anime writers who are good enough to write a great original screenplay.
As we were talking about this before, I was speculating, like, maybe the issue here is, like, with all the options available, who chooses to be a writer for like anime original series as opposed to like writing movies, doing adaptations?
Right.
It feels like that spot is a tough one for people to find themselves in and like work really hard. They probably get underpaid for the amount of effort it would take to craft.
Everybody doing anime gets underpaid for the amount of effort they're putting in, but
yeah, it's just that these are such a like great anime original. Feels like such a what's the word, albatross, such a fucking rare duck. I don't fucking know. And I'm waiting for another one. I'm waiting for another one. A golden goose. Well, yeah, that'll work. That'll work.
Oh, well, hopefully this coming season we'll have some interesting shit.
Let's hope
we're
so.
going to be talking about all the new first episodes for the fall season anime coming just in a couple weeks, probably.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't forget Thursdays and Sundays. We always have new KHANTENT!
Check it out, everybody, and don't forget our bonus episodes. $10, subscribe star. Sounds good.
Hell yeah.
See you soon, everybody. Bye!